Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak in this forum. I'm Charchita Mohapatra from Birlasoft, and today I'll walk you through Project Spotlight, a solution we implemented for Unilever's European transportation landscape to automate spot freight procurement in a controlled and governed way. The solution was designed and rolled out specifically for the Europe market. And since we are all at the European SIG Forum, the context and examples you will see today should feel very familiar and relevant. As Nishant mentioned, my Unilever product lead for the Europe transportation landscape was planned to join me today, but is tied up in another workshop. So I'll be covering the Unilever context slides as well as the Birlasoft and solution slides. I'll keep the session practical and process oriented. So the overall flow and value are clear, focusing on the problem we addressed in Europe, how the process works at a high level, and the outcomes the solution was designed to drive, right? So maybe just let me go to the second slide. I'll just switch off the camera because I doubt my internet connection would work that properly. I just wanted to introduce myself. Yeah. So having said that, in this slide, you can see the two presenters, Karthik, the Unilever product lead for the Europe transportation landscape, and myself from Birlasoft. And as we just mentioned a few seconds ago, Karthik was planned to join me, but is tied up in another workshop. So I'll be presenting this end to end, right? Let me quickly set the agenda. Here's today's flow. First, a quick overview of Unilever, then Birlasoft, and then the main section, the spotlight solution, its scope, objectives, the cost selection mechanism, the workflow, and the process execution, and finally, the benefits. So let's start with the Unilever context. Yeah, so Unilever operates at a significant global scale. 3.4 billion people use Unilever products every day, with presence across more than 100 countries, I think around 190 countries, and 60.8 billion euros turnover in 2024, as you can see here. And at this scale, transportation is not just about moving goods, right? Like it requires standardized, repeatable, and automated process to manage the volume, the variability, and also the cost effectiveness, right? And Unilever also has a very large portfolio, over 400 brands, with a large share of turnover coming from top power brands. Operationally, this translates into complex supply and distribution requirements, which ultimately impact transportation planning and execution. I'm not spending much time on these slides because I'm just covering here. Now, zooming into the transportation. This slide gives a transportation snapshot. Unilever runs transportation across multiple OTM landscapes, including North America, Latin America, AAR, Fusion, and Europe. With OTM usage at scale across countries and thousands of users, and multiple transportation modes such as TL, LTL, rail, and ocean. The reason this matters for Spotlight is simple. When shipment volumes are high and lanes are dynamic, spot procurement cannot remain heavily manual process anymore, right? It needs a system-driven workflow with guardrails, and that's where Spotlight fits, right? Uh, who are we? So a quick Birlasoft overview. So Birlasoft works across enterprise transformation with a strong focus on Oracle-based platforms and integrations. For transportation and OTM, our focus is on building scalable, governed solutions that reduce manual effort and support consistent operational execution, which is the approach we followed for the Unilever Europe Spotlight solution as well. And so I'll move on to one quick slide, right? And then that is about our Oracle footprint, and then into Spotlight. So this slide gives a snapshot of Birlasoft's Oracle cloud practice. I won't go through each number here, but the key point is that we have strong depth across Oracle supply chain management and transportation, working with clients on large, complex landscapes. That experience is important here. Again, I'm coming back to the topic again and again, that because Spotlight leverages standard OTM patterns, process flows, configuration-driven controls, right, and an automation layer to move spot procurement from a largely manual activity to a more controlled and scalable process or automated process. With that backdrop, let me move into Project Spotlight. Before getting into mechanics, let me explain how to think about Spotlight. I've been calling Spotlight from the beginning itself. So in the European transportation context, spot procurement needed to be faster and more consistent, but still governed. So Spotlight was designed to address that gap by letting the system propose prices based on the benchmarks and allowing carriers to respond quickly without planners manually validating every bid. From a design standpoint, the intent was to increase automation, improve productivity, and reduce friction between all parties involved while keeping control. So that's also why the initial scope focused on the primary inbound movements, specifically in the Unilever Europe market. Hope we're going good so far, right? With that context, let's look into what Spotlight was expected to achieve, right? The objectives. So Project Spotlight was designed to bring structure, consistency, and governance to spot freight procurement in the European market. So instead of relying on manual pricing, spot costs are system derived using benchmarks such as historical data and shipment characteristics, ensuring prices are consistent and defensible. So the system then automatically selects acceptable spot prices and drives tendering end-to-end, reducing manual bid comparison and planner dependency, the spot cycle times, all these things, right? And cost savings are achieved not by forcing the lowest price, but through controlled price discovery or reduced negotiation leakage. And like the planners go out and negotiate with the carriers, all those things, right? It reduces that part. And the ad hoc manual awards which are being given. So at the same time, the process generates structured data and statuses as well, making spot activity measurable, auditable, and easier to govern through clear KPIs. So if I have to summarize the objective in 3 key points, I would say first, price confidence. So Spotlight was designed so that spot prices are generated using benchmarks and rules instead of being manually negotiated every time. Second, process automation. So from cost selection to tendering, the aim was to reduce manual touch points and let the system drive execution wherever possible. And the third would be visibility, outcome visibility, like making sure the spot activity is measurable, it is trackable, and linked to cost and performance KPIs. So overall, the objective is less manual intervention with faster closure of spot shipments and better reporting visibility, shifting spot procurement from a subjective, planner-driven manual process to a system-driven, scalable, well-governed model suited for Europe, you can say. Right? So to deliver on these objectives, the way costs are selected becomes critical. Like I've been telling, system driven. So how are these costs selected? So let's look at the cost selection mechanism. At this point, the important question is, once a shipment enters Spotlight or the spot market or the process which we have created, the Spotlight process, how does the system decide who gets the shipment and at what price? So Spotlight, the process which has been designed here, that answers that through 3 decision paths, depending on how much automation is appropriate for the situation. The first path, I would say the reverse Dutch auction, which you see here, is fully automated price discovery. Here, the system progressively discovers an acceptable spot price within predefined limits without planner intervention. And the intent is to stay competitive, but never outside governance. And this is driven by reference pricing. We keep the reference price at the system level. So this is driven by the reference pricing at system defined limits. So anything outside acceptable threshold is automatically excluded. And this is what we refer to as the RDA path, which is reverse Dutch auction. Right? The second one would be the controlled competition with planner oversight. What happens here is it allows competition, but with control. Carriers can submit bids, the system captures them, and planners can step in only when business priorities require a choice. Right? It is, I mean, everything is automated, but there is still a flexibility that business, based on the business priorities, planners can step in. So it is providing access, but with control. So automation still does the heavy lifting here, but human judgment is retained wherever it is needed. And the third path, I would say, is the manual resolution. It's not a fallback, like it is by design, it has been created. What is it? It is not an exception, I wanted to say. And when automation does not find a clean winner, it may happen sometimes, right? It may not find a clean winner. Planners step in to finalize the award and keep operations moving. It should not stop, right? So Spotlight was never meant to remove planners. This is one very crucial point I wanted to call out, because it may seem like we are removing planners here, we are introducing automation, but it was never meant to remove planners, but it was meant to involve them only when the system cannot make a safe decision, right? Across all three paths, the system always works with a reference price, which I just mentioned, whether it comes from benchmark models for non-contracted shipments or contracted lane prices. So decisions are always validated against a baseline. There is always a benchmark, a baseline price or a reference price against which these spot prices are always validated. Now that we have seen how Spotlight makes decisions, let's look at how this plays out across the end-to-end workflow. Rather than walking through each box here, let me explain how can we read this workflow to make it easier to understand, right? So the workflow is designed around one principle here. Let the system handle the happy path and clearly flag exceptions for the planners, right? So when a shipment enters the spot process, the system first checks whether it qualifies for automated handling. How does it do that check? Based on timing, the shipment characteristics, readiness, and some predefined checks over there, right? It first checks whether the shipment qualifies for it. What happens? Shipments that qualify, those move through automated execution. And one more thing to highlight here, call it out, that again, we have the flexibility for the shipments to either opt out or opt in to this model, right? It is again flexible the way it has been designed. So shipments that qualify move through automated execution, the pricing, tendering, and award, everything. And anything that does not qualify is deliberately routed out of automation, so it doesn't block the flow. So the shipments which qualify falls under this particular automation. Everything has happened automatically until the awarding process. The ones which do not qualify, they are routed out of this automation. So there is no blockage over here, right? And how are those handled? You can call it controlled fallback, or we have a word over here we use that is called parking lot. So those exceptions are routed to what we call a parking lot, along with reason codes why these shipments could not fall under the automation. It applies the reason codes that is automated, right? And this makes it very clear to the planners why a shipment needs attention instead of forcing them to investigate blindly. The parking lot approach ensures planners can quickly identify and handle exceptions manually without slowing down the automated flow. So the workflow is not about complexity, it's about clarity. Automate what can be automated and make exceptions visible and manageable. Trying to keep it very simple in a way, right? And with that workflow in mind, let's look at how the process actually executes step by step in our next slide. So this slide brings together everything we have discussed so far. And It shows how Spotlight actually executes in practice, or how Spotlight actually executes inside Oracle Transportation Management, bringing together the decision logic and the workflow we just discussed. The easiest way to understand this is to walk through the process in phases and not in steps. So, and I'll also touch on how each phase is realized in OTM here, right? So if we drill it down to phases, there are 3 different phases here, which we are seeing. The automated, first one is the automated execution driven by OTM logic, RDA phase. The process always starts by attempting a fully automated resolution. Once a shipment is created in OTM and identified as eligible for spot, the system derives a reference price stored at the shipment level, right? Using predefined pricing logic. And based on this, the Spotlight triggers an automated spot execution path where pricing, eligibility checks, and tendering, these are handled by the system. So it's completely automated here. And from an OTM perspective, this is achieved using the agents, the configuration-driven rules set up in the agents, automation agents, and the workflow automation. So planners are not manually initiating or managing this step. We have some predefined rules, we have set up some custom tables, and then the agents are configured that way. So that's how it has been automated. And if a carrier accepts the system proposed price within the defined limits, the limit which we are defining, right, the reference pricing, the shipment is awarded immediately without planner intervention, right? So they have the option to either accept or provide, give their bid amount. If a carrier accepts it, the system proposed price, they are awarded the shipment right away. So there is no planner intervention here. The next approach or the next phase is the controlled spot phase with some system guardrails. So if the shipment is not resolved in the first phase, the process moves into the controlled spot execution phase. What happens here? OTM continues to drive the process. Spot bids are opened automatically, right? Based on the checks and the tender statuses and everything, spot bids are opened automatically. Pricing is constrained, and iterations are managed by the system rather than the planners. So even though there is a competition at this stage, the planner is not orchestrating it manually. Like OTM is still controlling the life cycle, opening the spot, managing iterations, and enforcing price boundaries. All these things are done by the system. So the phase allows some flexibility to discover an acceptable market price while still staying within governance. Yeah? The third phase is the manual resolution. If neither of the automated paths result in a clean winner, the process deliberately falls back to manual resolution. At this point, the system is surfaced clearly to planners along with its status, so they can intervene and finalize the award. So this is not an exception or failure. It is an intentional design choice, I would say. So Spotlight was built to let OTM handle what it can confidently automate and to involve planners only when the system cannot make a safe decision based on the predefined rules, maybe, right? So from an OTM design standpoint, the process degrades gracefully, I would say, from a full automation to a controlled system-driven execution, and finally to human decision when required. So this balance between automation and control is what makes Spotlight scalable or more reliable functionality for the European transportation landscape. And when you run spot procurement through a process like this, right, benefits are very clear. Let me just spend a minute on the benefits because they go beyond just cost savings here. We typically look at the impact of Spotlight across 4 dimensions: automation, cost, planner effort, and visibility. So when I think about the automation, let's think of it in this way, that it is shifting the work from planners to the system. So the first and foremost benefit would be the automation, I would say. So Spotlight moves a large part of spot procurement from a planner-driven activity to a system-driven flow inside OTM, from price derivation to spot execution to award, everything. This means planners are no longer initiating, they are no longer monitoring and closing every spot manually. Instead, the system handles the happy path and planners step in only for exceptions. At this scale, this level of automation is critical to handle volume without increasing operational overhead. So that is where it plays a big role. The cost reduction, definitely through control, and like it is very important to clarify what that means. Like, for example, savings here are not driven by forcing the lowest price. We are not behind the lowest price here. They come from the consistent benchmark-based pricing, the reference price, controlled price discovery, like the matching which happens, the comparison or validation, and the removal of ad hoc negotiation between the planners and the carriers. By using reference prices and system managed execution, Spotlight actually reduces the cost leakage and improves price discipline across regions. And the third one would be manual effort reduction. Planners spend less time comparing bids, chasing carriers, and managing spot life cycles. So it's quite visible that their role shifts from execution to supervision, if I have to put it in that way. So monitoring exceptions, making decisions only when the system cannot, and focusing on operational priorities rather than repetitive tasks. So, they become more productive, right? And the fourth one, I would say, is efficient reporting and governance. Because the entire spot process runs through structured system states and it generates clean, consistent data. This makes it much easier to track KPIs. For example, how many shipments were auto-resolved, where manual intervention was required, and how spot prices compared to benchmarks, different criteria, if you name it. So overall, the benefit of Spotlight is not just lower the spot costs, it's a more scalable operating model where automation, cost control, the planner productivity, and visibility all improve together. So to make this a bit more tangible, Let me show a few snapshots of how this looks in the system. Yeah. I'll spend a minute, not more than that, on these snapshots because they help make the spotlight process tangible. Up to now, we have talked about design, decision paths, and execution. What you see here is how that actually manifests in the system. So the first snapshot which you see here is a pass screen for carrier acceptance. The first, the carrier-facing pass screen where carriers see the shipments and the system proposed price here. So at this point, there's no negotiation or back and forth. Carriers simply choose whether to accept the price with the given window, within the given window. And this is a key shift from traditional spot processes. Decision making is simplified, cycle time is reduced, and the planner is no longer mediating individual carrier conversations. Right? The second snapshot is about the spotlight phase and status values. It highlights the spotlight phase, basically, like the statuses reflect exactly where a shipment is in the process, whether it's going through automated execution or a controlled spot or requires manual attention, the three phases which I broadly explained. This is important from an OTM perspective because it gives planners and supervisors immediate visibility without having to investigate logs or screens why a particular shipment could not fall under the automated process. Why do I have to investigate it? Because the shipments which fall out of automation, it also adds a reason code to that. There are some predefined reason codes. It adds a reason code. So it gives a high level of, a very detailed level of visibility, I would say, and makes the life of planners easier. The third snapshot is about the carrier acknowledgement confirmation. This confirms that acceptance is explicit and system recorded, closing the loop cleanly. So from an execution standpoint, this reduces ambiguity and ensures the award is clearly captured in OTM for downstream processes. So these snapshots are not just UI examples. They show that Spotlight is a fully operational capability. Carriers interact with it, then planners can track it, and the system maintains clear control and visibility throughout. So that is all from my side.